Why didn't you close that sale? What happened? Why didn't that deal go through, especially the one that you knew was supposed to? What the heck happened? Why didn't it work? Hey, we're going to talk about it on today's podcast, the 4 parts of every sale. Today on the show, we're going to get into it. And if you're new to the podcast, hello, welcome to our humble little show. My name is Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast. We've been running this show for, as of recording this episode, a little over 6 years now, almost 500 episodes, exciting stuff, and you've come to the right place to learn how to do business better. So one of the things I love about this podcast is we don't do a lot of theoretical stuff. There's no fluff. It's just the stuff that actually works today on the podcast. Hey, before we dive in, we do have a brief word for one of the incredible businesses that sponsors the podcast. Check out this quick ad, and don't forget you can also support the podcast on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Thank you to all of you who have supported the podcast over the years. We'll get right back at it. See you soon. Do you ever feel like your payment processor is robbing you blind? For some of us, it's not blind. We look at the amount of money that's going to our payment processor month after month, and a lot of times we ask ourselves, is there a better way? I'm making good money, yet so much of it isn't actually ending up in my pocket. In the world of payment processing, in many cases, it's a cashless world, so you have to have a payment processor you can really trust. I personally am a big fan of Brad Norwood, who's the owner of PrimePaymentsUSA.com. Brad's a business owner himself. He knows all the challenges that come with running a business. More importantly, he knows the value of an individual customer. See, some of these bigger businesses, they're all about scale. They're all about bringing in as many customers as possible. But do they know your name? Do they know your business? Do they know what's important to you? In many cases, the answer is no. And in worst cases, they're just looking to get as much money from every transaction that you work hard for, which really doesn't feel too good. So you got to reach out to Brad Norwood today and understand how he's doing business and why it can save you money month after month. More importantly, you might even ask him about his zero-fee payment processing that he's offering to a select few of people. Go to PrimePaymentsUSA.com and start putting the money that you worked hard for back into your pocket. So I want to talk today about a situation we've all been in before, where a person comes across, maybe they call you, they do your contact form on your website, they email you, they message you on social media, and they're like, Blake, I'm ready to buy. I need this from you. Let's do it. You get excited, you're energized, you're like, haha, a sale coming in today. And then a few days later, the deal is dead. It doesn't go through. It doesn't happen. And you find yourself frustrated, wondering, where did I go wrong? Why am I such a bad salesperson? Why didn't this deal pan out? Well, the answer is not necessarily that you're a bad salesperson. In fact, I think that a lot of us are actually a little bit better at sales than maybe we give ourselves credit for. What actually happens is a fundamental misunderstanding of what is required for a sale to happen. Now, I've talked a lot about sales on the podcast. I've talked a lot about my perspective on sales, my theory on sales. I'm making it sound like I'm going to do like a manifesto or something. But if you are checking out the podcast for the first time, some just very basic high-level things about me is I'm very anti used car salesperson strategies. I'm very anti trickery, manipulation. I don't do selling with urgency where it's like, oh, well, if you don't buy from me today, the deal's gone tomorrow. It's not that there aren't some sales tactics that are out there that can work that I don't do. It's that there are also certain sales tactics that I think are fundamentally wrong. They're unethical and they're not a good way to do business. I got into this conversation with someone else on Facebook the other day where I was commenting on someone's post. Yes, I still use Facebook for some of my content. And the basic conversation we were having is that unfortunately there are agencies and organizations out there that just operate on outpacing their churn. What I mean by that is whenever they sign a new customer, whenever they get a new deal, they know that eventually this customer is going to be disappointed. They're going to move on. And my only job then as a business owner is to find the next customer before the previous one leaves me. Again, I don't just think this is a bad business strategy. I think this is wrong. It's wrong. It's immoral. You're lying, you're cheating, you're doing wrong by your customer's dollar. It's incredibly disrespectful to their time, and it's not any way to build a brand. So that's high level stuff. And another high level point that inevitably comes up on the show is understanding that on a basic level, when someone does say yes to buying from you, it is because you have convinced them that the potential upside outweighs the risk, at least in the moment that they're saying yes to you. So the risk of, will this even work? How much is it going to cost me? If I do it a second time, maybe the embarrassment of, I paid a lot of money to someone and it didn't work out. All of these things that can be included in that, whatever those risks are, when someone buys from you, you have convinced them that, hey, you can trust me, and the reward of us working together, the solving of your pain, is actually better than the risk of what could go wrong, or it's at least more secure or steady. Sorry, as I'm talking here, for those watching the video, I'm realizing my lips are chapped now that I'm talking about this. Anywho, but I want to get into more nuance today. I want to get into a more nuanced discussion below the high level conversation on the 4 parts of every great deal, the perfect sale. And I want to give you some examples of, in my own life, sales conversations that I've been part of, deals that didn't go through, even though I was sure they were going to go through. So all that to say, there's 4 parts to every great deal. Let's talk about them. The first one is component 1, part 1. Is this person the right person to buy from? On a simpler level, this is reputation. I can trust you. I know what you're about. I believe in your values. We're aligned on the way we do business, maybe. But on a bigger picture, I trust your expertise. I think you're skilled enough to do the job. There's people that I've talked to over the years that were incredibly well-intentioned. They were incredibly, I know I could trust them to try really hard. It's like that, oh man, the Detroiters with, that silly comedy show. I can't think of the actor's name, but is the attorney, and his whole thing is Walt tries. It's like, call 888 Walt tries. And his whole shtick is, I try my best, but he's not very good at being a lawyer. As a salesperson, or as someone buying from someone else, I may fully believe that you're a good person, that, again, you have the right intentions, but unless I really feel like this person is going to get the results, I'm not going to make that deal. It's not going to happen. So you got to be the right person for the job. I was selling someone on some consulting years ago, so maybe year 2 of my business, and the person said, well, let me think it over. I want to think it over. And I said, oh, well, I was, classic objection handling. I said, hey, well, typically when someone tells me they need to think it over, it's because the price is wrong or the person is wrong. Either the price is not the right fit, it's not the right budget, or you don't really trust me to be the one to do the job for you. So can I ask you, which one is it? And every time before this was really early in my business. Every time before this I'd ever asked the question, it was always, it's price. It's price. It's not the right budget, whatever. Well, I asked this question, and this guy, in a stroke of candidness, he goes, well, it's not price. I can tell you that. So clearly trying to be kind about it, but I was like, ooh, okay. This person does not trust that I am the one who can get the job done for him. A lot of times when someone buys from you, they don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to make you feel bad. And so they come up with all sorts of reasons without realizing that, actually it was that this person wasn't the right fit. This person wasn't the right person to actually solve my problem for me. So that's the first one. The second one is it the right budget? Is the budget right? Is the price right? Have you ever had someone call you and be like, yeah, I want to work together. Let's do it. And then you say the price and they're like, oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm not sure about that. For all the intentions you may have to help someone, if they don't have the funds to actually pay whatever your fee is, this conversation is never going to end in a done deal sale. And what happens is often what people do is instead of realizing that someone's not a buyer, they double down, they devalue the value of their service, and they say, well, what if I knocked off 10% today? Well, what if and I saw this one online where it was like, hey, and it was like a $5,000 online offer. And the silly thing was it's a $5,000 offer. And the guy he goes, well, if you just pay me $1 today, then I won't make you pay the rest for 30 days. Like at some point, this becomes a little bit of insanity where it's like, it's hard to maintain the value of what it is you're selling if you're constantly devaluing the dollar amount to try to loop in people who are not your buyer. What I have found is that these people who you try to create flexibility for, and I'm not saying you can't be flexible for like payment terms, or I've had people over the years who were friends of mine or who I just knew in the business world for a long time. And they were like, hey, my cash flow is not super great right now. Can I pay this amount instead of what you typically would have taken? And then I will pay the rest in 30 days. And I've been like, you know what? Sure. Not a big deal. There's a level of like easiness in doing business with people that I live around that I think being flexible is not really a big deal about. What I'm talking about though is, oh, wait, don't go anywhere. Hang on. Let's bring the price down. We can do it for this much. And also, not only are you devaluing your service, there's also this level of confusion for the customer where they're like, wait, what? Like, well, now it's worth less. What? Like, why didn't you? And there's also like this level of mistrust of like, why didn't you lead with your best deal? It's the car lot salesperson who they say, yeah, the window price is 18.7. And you say, oh, I can't pay that. And they go, well, you know what? Just for you today, I'm going to bring it down to just 18 even final price. And it's like, well, wait, so like, why? Like, why wasn't it 18 to start with? Like, I'm confused. Like, you were going to charge me $7 more? And this done repeatedly is why people have gotten why cars salespeople and also people in sales have gotten such a negative reputation, because you're not selling with transparency and honesty. What I was trying to say a second ago too was when you discount your services and you convince someone to buy from you, I have found that those people typically are not great customers. They typically don't stay around long. They typically they are more of a headache than your ideal customer is. So instead of spending all of that energy trying to acquire that one customer, it's infinitely a better use of your resources and time to instead say, hey, thanks for letting me know, and to move on to the next customer. Like when you talk about price from the get-go and someone says, out of my budget, that person has just done you a favor. They've done you a favor. I really don't ascribe to that's out of my budget. Well, hang on. How do you know? Like maybe we can work something out. I think all of that is obnoxious. I think it's obnoxious to the person you're selling to. I think the person is like, oh my gosh, here we go. When you get the price out from the get-go, you have saved each other time. You've respected one another. And now you can take all of the energy you would have used on that one person with someone else. Which, by the way, you don't have to also, if you want like a nice middle ground about this, you don't have to be obnoxious. You can say, hey, I totally get it. We're out of your budget. Well, hey, we're also really great at, we typically always get back with our customers within 24 hours, and our customers are are key to us. We really care about our customers. So if you ever get in a situation where you're not happy with your current provider, I'd love a conversation. Keep me in mind. I'll see you later. And then you might reach out 6 months down the road and say, hey, I know we were out of budget. Just wanted to check in, make sure you're still doing well, see if I can do anything to help. Let me know. Because it may be 6 months down the road, the person's like, oh my gosh, wow, this company was more expensive, but I just don't want to deal with the pain of my current provider. So I'm willing to pay more. Or maybe their understanding of what you sell has grown and matured, and now they see the value in it. You never know, right? So you're not like saying, all right, see you later, and you cut them out of your life entirely. It's just you don't need to be obsessive and stalkerish and begging of, please, maybe we do need to do business together. I was selling a podcast service to I was doing cold pitching and sending some emails to people. And there was a lady who I pitched, helping her with her show. She immediately responded and said, hey, thanks so much for reaching out. It's out of my budget. And so there wasn't like, let me now get you on my mailing list or my now redirect funnel, yada, yada. Let me downsell you. It was, hey, thanks. Hey, I wish you well with your show. And then what I did was I connected with her on LinkedIn. I comment on her content, and I don't comment with, oh, wow, if only you had someone else handling your podcast, winky emoji. It's just genuine. This person may never come back around. This person may never be a customer, and I may never be within her budget. But it's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm not a good fit. Let's steward the relationship, and they may have someone who can use my services down the road. Like it's weird to me that I'm even explaining how to be just a normal human being with someone instead of like not being so transactional that it's like both. It's two things. It's one, not being obsessive about convincing someone to buy from you. And it's two, not being so transactionally focused that if someone's not a buyer, then I'm not going to invest any time or attention to that person. I had a guy who called me, probably would have been 3 or 4 years ago. This guy emailed me. I ignored him, ignored all of them. Got messages on LinkedIn, ignored them. This person found my cell phone number, called me. Hey, I really want to work together. Let's do it. Finally get a text from him. And I'm like, wow, this guy is just relentless. So I texted him back, or maybe I emailed him. I can't remember, but I responded to him and I said, hey, I get it. You're grinding, you're hustling, man. You've gone all out on trying to get a hold of me. I'm going to be real honest. I'm not your customer. I don't need what you're selling. I have no interest in that. However, I can tell you're working hard in the sales game. So what I'm willing to do is I'm willing to connect you. I'm willing to get on a phone call with you, 10, 15 minutes, and I'm willing to connect you with who the right customer would be. I want to hear who your customer is, and I'm willing to connect you with those people. This guy never responded. Didn't respond. Didn't answer. It was like, as soon as I said, I'm not your buyer, later, I'm out. And I was kind of like, dude, I was like being genuine. I was really willing to help you, which maybe he thought I was trying to like reverse Uno sell him, right? Which I've heard stories of this, by the way, of where like someone tries to sell a service. And then it's like, I was talking to a woman years ago who she was selling a service to like chiropractors and doctors and what have you. And I was asking her how like the cold sales was going. And she's like, yeah, I went to a chiropractor's office to pitch them. And I said, all right, well, how'd it go? And she said, well, I ended up becoming his customer. I was like, yes, this person, they got you. They was a very smart salesperson. So, just keep this in mind. It's okay if someone's not the right customer. It's okay if they can't afford you. You don't have to panic. Don't freak out. Now, if you've been running a business long-term and no one is paying your fee, no one is buying what you're selling, that's usually an insight that whatever you're selling is not the right price point. It's not. Now, this doesn't mean like you're on one sales conversation a year and the person didn't buy. That's more of a volume conversation. But if you're having sales conversations and no one is buying, literally every competitor is charging a fraction of what you're charging. Newsflash, the market's telling you it's not the right fit. It's not the right price point. So we have wrong person, wrong price point. Let's talk about the next one, the right timing, the right timing. When someone reaches out to you to have a problem solved, that still may not be the most important issue in their life. It may be that they were bored one day, they were in the car driving, it came to mind that, oh, we need to fix this problem. So they did a Google or, they called you, they found your card and they said, hey, I need to get this fixed. And then, but it was never actually like a top 5 issue. It was like number 37 on the list of all the things they care about. Sometimes when you are selling to someone, it's worth it then, because this is kind of the insight with all 4 of these steps, is not just being aware of it, but also addressing it in the conversation. We address the budget conversation, the price conversation almost from the get-go. It typically costs X amount. This is typically what you're going to end up paying. We address the conversation of timing I typically in a sales conversation, I'll typically ask someone, hey, how is this like an important thing for you to solve? Like, is this a real pain point? Is this an urgent issue? Because sometimes I'll find myself in conversations with people where they'll say, yeah, this is something that's really bothering us or really bothering our company, but that's like a 2026 issue. And I'm like, okay, so this isn't really, and sometimes they even actually say, hey, so this doesn't sound like this is really a sales conversation then. And they might say back, and I'm just thinking like a very particular one. The person was like, he was like, no, not really. I just kind of wanted to get to meet you and know what you were all about so that I can keep you in mind for next year. Excuse me. So bearing that in mind, asking the question around when does this need to get solved? Why is this important? And naturally you're asking these questions in a way that isn't drawn out. Like when someone wants to buy from you, they're like ready to buy right then and there. You don't need to put them through the ringer of like 30 questions where they're like, dude, why are you asking? Because there's also this nuance of like, the more you ask and the more you talk about the solution, the more complicated it feels to the customer. And the more complicated it feels, the harder the solution seems. And the harder that it seems, the more likely that it may not happen. And the likelihood that it may not happen then represents an incredible risk to your buyer. And where there's risk, people walk away. So, I'm going to go to someone else who it's easier to work with that person. The risk isn't there. And I feel better about my investment. So all of that nuance is really important. I was having a conversation with someone about they were wanting to do a podcast with Podcastable. And we're doing a lot of podcast work as of late, by the way. So that's why my examples are coming up with that. But he was talking about his show and moving his show over. And as he was talking, I said, hey, it doesn't really sound like that's like an urgent issue for you. It doesn't sound like this is really an urgent. It sounds like what you're doing now is kind of working for you. And he was like, yeah, it really is. He's like, it really isn't something I'm looking to change in the short term. So what then you find yourself then in is either you curate the relationship so that when the timing is right, you're the no-brainer answer. It's called playing the long game. Or you're obnoxious and weird and you try to convince them, no, this needs to change right now. Like your whole world rides on this one decision with the podcast. I have found that it's what I typically do when I have conversations with people is I ask questions for clarity because I really want to understand, but it's not questions to convince. So someone says, I was in a conversation and the timing seemed right. I shared this example in one of my previous episodes. The timing seemed right. And the person said, hey, yeah, we really need this. And then he said, hey, well, let's talk again in 6 months, or maybe it was 3 months. I don't remember. But for the sake of the story, we'll just say 6 months. So let's talk again in 6 months. So not asking to convince, but asking to get clarity. I said, okay, we could do that. Help me understand though. You told me that you needed this. You told me that you needed this yesterday, but now you're telling me, let's talk in 6 months. Help me understand. Because as far as I can see it, if we wait 6 months from now, we're going to be exactly in the same position we are today, just 6 months later. Am I misunderstanding this? Like, do I have this wrong, or am I not getting it? And he was like, no, actually, yeah, that's right. You're correct. That's right. So sometimes when someone gives you a timetable, and this is with any excuse, by the way, or objection, excuse me, it's okay to ask clarifying questions so that you can really understand where the person's coming from or what's happening. And then the last one, number 4, we talked right person, right time, right price. You have to have the right solution. If someone is trying to solve a problem and what you offer is not what they want, I can't think of a more diametrically opposed conversation in the sales world. And I can't think of anything more insane than to try to convince someone that they should want your solution when they don't want your solution. Again, there's room here for clarifying questions. Maybe someone doesn't fully understand what you sell. I run a consulting business. Some people don't know what consultants do. And so when someone says, I might be on a sales conversation, it's just a random example. I might be on a sales conversation and someone says, I'm not going to hire a consultant. I don't want to spend money on you, and you just send me the link to your latest course, or you send me the link to your YouTube channel. I don't want to have to do that. I might say like, oh, well, is that what your experience was with your previous consultant? Oh, is that how you spent your money previously? Well, yeah, I totally get why you had a bad experience. That's not the norm. Some people do it that way. I don't do it that way. This is how I do it. Is that something you're looking for? Is that the kind of thing? Oh, man, that's exactly what I was hoping for when I hired the first person. Or they may say like, no, I hate consultants. I'm never going to hire a consultant, which is fine. Again, I'm not going to convince someone. I'm asking clarifying questions. Really easy example here. I've given this example 1,000 times. So with Podcastable, someone calls, I get a call almost every week. Hey, I want to start a podcast. Or I get a contact form. I want to start a podcast. I heard you're the guy. I want to start a podcast. One of the first questions I always ask is, great. Do you like podcasts? And I swear, like 3-1, I feel like it's 70%, 80%, maybe even more. The person almost always responds with, no, I hate podcasts. I don't like podcasts. I never listen to podcasts. And then I say, okay, so then why do you want to start a podcast? Oh, well, someone told me I needed one. Well, someone told me I should. Someone told me it's like the latest thing. And it's like, it could be the latest thing. It's worked for me. Let's talk about what it might look like for you. We talk about the time investment and the engagement, and here's how many episodes you can expect to do before you start to see a return, yada, yada, yada. And after all that said, is that something you sound that does it sound like you would want to do all of those things? Does that sound like something that'd be interesting to you? And either they say, wow, yes, let's do it. Or they say, typically when someone leads with, I hate podcast, when I only make it worse. I only make it worse when I'm like, yeah, well, it's a lot of work and you're looking at probably like a multi-year engagement and it's going to cost you money and yada, yada. They typically go, wow, great. I'm glad you convinced me of how bad this idea was that I already kind of knew from the get-go was a bad idea. Rarely, I say rarely, never has anyone been like, oh man, I'm glad you told me how awful it is when I already hated shows. Let's still do it. The point is, it's insanity as a salesperson to convince someone that your solution is the right solution when they don't believe in it in the first place. Now, when someone generally comes to me, they may say, hey, I'm trying to get more customers. And maybe they don't know the solution. Maybe they don't know what they need. Again, my job is to ask clarifying questions and to guide them to what is genuinely the best answer for them. And genuinely may not be a purchase from me. Genuinely is literally whatever is best for them. So someone may say, yeah, I'm I can't think of a good example. I'm a roofer. I'm a plumber. I'm a tradesman. Actually, I'll take an example from a customer I had who's an electrician. He said, I'm an electrician. I'm trying to get more deals, trying to get more customers. And I said, okay, how are you getting your customers currently? Where are they coming from? What does your typical customer look like? Are you residential? Are you commercial? If you're commercial, do you do any kind of networking, any BNIs, any, where are you going that business owners are? So and this may be someone who is like right on the brink of an incredible like uptick in their business. The solution may not be, hey, wasn't this great? Let's keep working together. The solution may be, hey man, you're like right there. You're right there on a big break for your business. Why don't you go try this thing? Go see if these things work. And if they do, the money you make from that, you can reinvest in a contract between the two of us, and we can see how much farther we can take this thing, how much further we can take this thing. So the solution may not be what is your solution, or the solution they're looking for may be related to what you sell, but it's not what you sell. So we do SEO. Someone might come and say, hey, I need a paid marketing campaign, which those are two very, a traditional marketing campaign is going to have both of those offerings. Usually, they don't always. So someone may come in and say, hey, yeah, I need to hire, good advice. I need to work together. We need a paid marketing campaign. Well, that's not the solution that I offer. And so we can figure something out for you. No. Stick to what you offer. Stick to what's you. Stick to what your service is. Do right by the customer. Hey, I'm glad that we're in your budget, that we're the company you want to work for, that this is a pressing issue for you. Unfortunately, we don't do that. Now, there may be some opportunity there. Again, clarifying questions. Hey, why do you want to do a paid marketing campaign? Well, we need more customers. Okay. Is this something short-term or long-term? Man, really over the next year, we're just trying to really, bring in more business to our website. Have you thought about SEO? Have you thought about some organic efforts to get more? Because that is something I can help you with. So I might have a conversation with someone to help them understand that, hey, the solution you were looking for is not the only solution. Maybe there's another one that's a good fit. Again, clarifying questions, not convincing. Or they may say, no, we've done paid marketing campaigns for the last 10 years. It works great for us. That's what we need. We just like your company. We wanted to do business with you. And then I might say, hey, I really appreciate that. You're welcome to refer business to us. Unfortunately, I don't do that thing. And then I never like to leave someone just totally hanging like, oh, I can't help you. Usually what it is, and this is also the benefit of having great referral partners and also just being friends with your competition. I'm friends with my competitors. So I might say, hey, you know what? Hey, go talk to this person. Or someone might call me for a podcast and they say, hey, we're really looking for a studio to do a podcast with. And I'll say, hey, you should probably call Brian Fitton with Go Rogue. And they do awesome work. Give them a phone call. Maybe they're a better fit for you. So I never leave someone hanging, but I also let them know, hey, I don't do that. Here's someone that can do it for you. So the next time your deal doesn't pan through, it could be one of those four things. Did you talk about if you were the right person? Did you talk about price? Did you talk about timing? And did you clarify that your solution is the right solution for them? And if the deal didn't go through, chances are it was one of those four things. So, hey, thanks so much for listening to the show today. That's today's podcast. I appreciate you tuning in, and that's today's good advice. We'll see you later.